From ghost stories to soul lessons, transforming fear into love. Hello, soul traveler. Thank you for taking this beautiful journey with me as I have been sharing the ghostly encounters and experiences that have helped me to develop who I am as an empathic psychic medium and energy guide. So in this video, I'm going to continue diving in to the experiences and encounters that I had into my 20s and 30s. And this is where things started to shift and change for me. After I met my husband and we started dating for a while, things for the most part were pretty quote unquote normal. I had, as I mentioned in my previous video, turned down my dimmer switch. So even though things were still coming through and I was still sensing, feeling, knowing, hearing, all the things, it wasn't as intense as it was in my teens and in my early childhood. It really was how do I put it? It really was kind of almost like a bubble where you could see things still kind of happened around you, but yet you were contained in the safety of this bubble. So you weren't being bombarded. So I wasn't being bombarded and overwhelmed. In retrospect, what I was really doing was just ignoring much of what was happening. I really got to this place of ignoring and disregarding what I knew to be true, what I knew I could feel and sense, and I just lived my life with blinders on. I really did. And my husband and I, well, at the time he wasn't my husband, but my boyfriend and I, now husband, we were just going to parties. We were hanging out with his family, with his friends. And, we were just doing young people things. We were just living our lives. And I was still finishing up school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a career. He was working. And so we were just living our lives. And we were doing this for a while until I ended up getting pregnant. And of course, that really changes things for a couple. And we were thrilled. And I had my daughter, and we decided to get married after this. And he changed careers, and I still was figuring out what I wanted to do. So for the most part, I was just kind of focusing on being a mom. When our daughter got to be about, I want to say around 2, I saw things that had happened to her beforehand, but there was things that she would do. I would catch her having conversations with somebody, and when I would say, "Who are you talking to?" she would say, "Oh, so and so," or this and that. And I would say, And the interesting thing is that the more she showed signs that she was talking to people, the more I started connecting in to the energy of what she was seeing, sensing, feeling, and what was there. And when I connected in with my own intuition and read the energy of what was going on around her, I knew that there was somebody there. And so in a lot of ways, my having a child with amazing and incredible gifts as well opened me back up to the fascination piece, to the curiosity piece, to wanting to turn my dial. Well, first it was just a tiny bit, but then it was all the way up, because I really wanted to make sure that she grew up without the fear. She could nurture and feel nurtured around her own abilities, around her own skill set, around her own talents. And I really wanted her to feel empowered by her gifts, by her abilities. And I really wanted to help her do that. But I had no idea how to do this. And I didn't even know the first thing of how to help her. And so what I basically ended up doing was I set an intention to my guides, to my higher self, to my soul. And I said, okay, guys, I need my abilities and I need this understanding and I need this wisdom. I need it back. I really need to dive into all things. I really want this. I really want to make sure that I can support her to the best of my ability. And I cranked my dimmer switch all the way up. And I said, bring it. Let's go. Let's do this. And looking back now, 20 plus years later, this really was a defining moment for me because it opened the floodgates and it transformed. It was almost like I drew the line in the sand and it was like, hey, let's do this. We're doing it. And it no longer became about me. It became about how can I support my daughter in becoming a very well-rounded, strong, stable, foundational person by bringing in that intuitive aspect, that those gifts, those abilities, that natural innate wisdom that she herself was holding, that I was holding, that never got to be nurtured with me. But yet for her, it was like I wanted to ensure that she could become this very well-balanced individual to connect into her intuition and connect with the unseen world in a dynamic, in an inspirational, in a way that I never could when I was a kid. And this sparked the curiosity, the passion, the drive, the intensity of me working towards honing my abilities, honing my skill set, honing my craft as an empathic psychic medium and an energy guide. The dynamics around wanting to support her really drove me forward. It really drove me through the fear. It really allowed me to take the steps that I needed to support myself through my own fears around everything that I had experienced up to this point. All of the conversations that I had had with my mom around the experiences she had with the time that she was with my dad, and her own experiences as well, even when she was a kid, and some of the other ones too that happened later on in her life. And all of the experiences that I had shared and the with my sister and her experiences and our connection that we had developed and her curiosity around connecting in and honing her own abilities. And just at the time too, the internet was becoming more of a bigger thing. And we got our first computer when I turned 19, 20, something like that. And resources that once were unattainable or not readily available became available to me. You could look up things, you could search things, you could more easily step in and connect. And this really was part of the energetic shift and the energetic movement that happened around the early 2000s that really allowed much of what was hidden energetically to start trickling down to the consciousness of all of these souls, all the beings, all the humans. And so for me, I started to find more of quote unquote my people. more of the people who had had experiences that were similar to mine, where they saw, they sensed, they felt, they knew, they heard these individuals, they heard these beings, they heard these people, these ghosts, these spirits. And it became like, oh, wow, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Other people see this stuff too. And it started to unravel some of the my own preconceived limitations that I put on myself. And it allowed me to even unravel a bit of the fear around even sharing some of these experiences with other people, because hey, they've experienced them too, or something similar. So I started to consume all of this knowledge, all of this wisdom, reading all these books, taking a bunch of courses, connecting with people in the community, specifically at this little holistic center, and then really sharing some of my own experiences and not being given the look of like, wow, you are so strange and out of this world. And I mean, as I continued to explore this community, this new community opportunity, there was a few people that did give me that look, but it was more of like a curiosity look of going, wow, that's never happened to me, but that sounds incredible. And how did you feel? And what did you learn from this? And so it was more of an engaging conversation of pure curiosity and pure desire to want to get to know your experiences more, than, ooh, you're weird and you're crazy and you should be locked up kind of a conversation. And what I took away from all of this was, wow, I could actually perhaps start to work and share who I really am with people. This was a concept that was never a reality for me. To believe that I could actually bring forward my abilities and skill sets and talents as a psychic medium, as an empath, and actually contribute something in a positive way was beyond comprehensible to me. It really wasn't even something that was on my radar. Even if there was a bit of a spark and a desire that, yeah, I'd love to do that, it never actually felt tangible or even possible. And so this sparked so much. And I really do contribute this to my having a child, because it was in that desire to bring forward a more positive, it's not even positive, it's a more nurturing experience for her, that really started to break open and break me away from all of those preconceived self-limiting thoughts, patterns, habits, and beliefs. And it allowed me to start vibrating at a different vibrational frequency, where I could actually see new possibilities, a new life for myself, a new way to bring the two worlds together that I was never able to do before this. And these experiences and these possibilities of being in this community just really started to unravel so much for me. And the experiences that I started to have with the ghostly encounter experiences became so much different. And even though there was still an underlying fear and a premise of a fear that would still kind of play underneath the background, in the background, underneath the scene, there was this drive to want to support my child. This drive would really continued to push me forward. And even though things still terrified me, they didn't seem that the experience of being afraid didn't stick the same way. It would be like, okay, that happened. What was this? What did I learn from this? What was this teaching me? How how can I be of service to this person? And oh, that was really cool. And so it became more of this drive of curiosity. Some of the early experiences with the ghosts were a lot of the little kids that my daughter tended to have around her. There was one particular one that she called Too Slow. And I had asked her why she called her Too Slow. And she said that she was too slow to get out of the way of the car that hit her. And she told me what she looked like. She described her and everything. And it was pretty profound when she would describe things. It would often be what I had already seen or felt into already. And it was really interesting to see how this dynamic between us would help me to kind of understand the experience. And there was times though where I was walking out on the land up in this particular area, and I knew there was something not quite right with the land. There was something that needed to be healed. And I didn't use that terminology back then, but there was something that I felt scared for. And anytime I would walk by there, I always got really kind of creeped out, or that creeped out hair on the back of your neck, the hair, like everything just rising, like goosebumps, everything. So you knew there was something there. And it wasn't until I went into the energy with more of an open heart and an open perspective, even though I was terrified to stand there and every cell in my body wanted to run in a different direction. I stood there in this particular group of trees where I felt this energy the strongest. And I stood there opening up my heart, opening up all of my energy, opening myself up in a lot of ways, and saying to this being, okay, I'm here, I'm listening. What do you want to share with me? Then I got this whole big piece of information about how they were riding on a horse. They were dressed in this uniform, and they had the buttons, and they were riding after somebody. I think they were somewhat of like a police officer, or whatever would have been deemed as like a police officer back then, but it was like a marshal maybe or something like that. And it was all dressed in like this blue uniform and had the gold trim and the buttons, and he was on this horse, and something spooked the horse, and the horse reared up, and the fella fell off, and when he fell, he ended up snapping his neck. All this information just comes flooding in, and I see everything, and I can see him, and it was like I even got like the year. I can't remember the exact year now, but at the time I got the year, and I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do with all this information now? Because that's a lot of information. And I'm still standing there terrified because there's this being that I can't see. And I am getting all this information about their life. And yet, what am I supposed to do with this? How do I help them? Like, I didn't know how to help them. So it was almost like I have this, I guess I kind of like to refer to them as like my crossover team. So I have this team of guides, and have this team of guides, and I call them my crossover team. And so they're made up of angels, loved ones, all things, okay? And they, all of a sudden, it's like they must have stepped in and they were helping and support me, because I've always felt like they've been there for me. I know they have. And so it's like they must have stepped in that moment and helped to guide me, because it was like all of a sudden I knew what to say. I knew how to connect with this man's energy, and I knew what he needed. And there was this beautiful exchange that, really looking back on now, was rooted in compassion and this drive to still want to help him, even though every part of me is shaking and trembling in terror and even disbelief, like disbelief of like, is this really happening? And here he really just wanted somebody to listen to him. He really just wanted somebody to acknowledge him and to let him know what happened to him. And it was in a split second that once he had this awareness piece, he was gone. I saw some, like, I sometimes see, sometimes don't see. I saw this, but in this instance, I saw this beautiful golden, like, white, so bright white light with a golden tinge open up, and I just saw him enter into the light, and he was gone. And ever since that moment, anytime I walked by that particular part of the land there, in that particular part with the trees, I no longer felt that hair on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't feel the goosebumps. I didn't feel the vibrational frequency shift or change. And it actually felt like a really beautiful space afterwards. And that was, one of the earlier experiences in my 20s where I decided to play around with crossing people over and actually opening myself up to actually communicating with them in a willing manner, instead of this being blindsided, or being like pestered, where I would put the walls up and say, nope, you cannot come near me. And basically the fear walls. This was the early stages of me taking down those fear walls and crumbling them so that I could start to nurture my own abilities. And it did get easier for me after this. And, but it took a while. It has taken me a lot of practice and a lot of being in these situations where I was willing and able and open to saying, hey, let's have a conversation. I know you're there. What is it that I can do to help you? What is it that you need to share with me? Is there something I can help you with? And there was several. There was times where I would look up and I would see somebody standing there, and then they would be gone. There was, in the one place that we lived at, I was doing some ironing out in the kitchen, and I was looking down the hallway, and all of a sudden I saw a woman standing in my bedroom looking out the window, and she was all dressed in a Victorian type style dress with a high collar, the lace collars right up to her neck, her hair all pinned up. And her dress was actually looked like an olive type green dress. And I can still see her plain as day, perfectly, as if it just had happened. And she was standing there, and I saw her, and I even did like a double take. She was still there. And then when I connected further in, I said, I kind of closed my eyes and I said, do you need my help? Is there anything you need? And then she was gone. And, so it was, and I did see her with my naked eye. And I thought, whoa, what am I seeing here? And I started to see a lot of fairies. Oh, the fairies, as I was opening up at this time and really connecting in with nature, I would see a lot of fairies, and I still see a lot of fairies to this day, actually. Even the dragons as well, because the dragons started to come a couple of years. Actually, I've been working with the dragons now for over 10 years. But basically, well, or longer really, but consciously I've been working with the dragons for over 10 years. But basically, each of these experiences led me to unravel the fear further. And I started to see these more as soul lessons versus being ghost encounters or ghost stories. And even referring to these spirits or these ghosts as ghosts didn't resonate with me, didn't align with me, because what I started to see was that many of these interactions were with people, and they were people who were stuck, or they were people who were in a different vibrational frequency than what I was. And for whatever reason, I could sense them. I could see them. I could hear them. And they were wanting to connect with someone who could see them or connect with them or communicate with them. And so, because they were people, the guidance and the wisdom that dropped in around this was that they were somebody's loved one. They were somebody's grandma, they're somebody's grandpa, they're somebody's kid, there's some, their brother, their sister, their aunt, their uncle. They are somebody's loved one. And that is truly when the fear started to transform into love, because it no longer became this dark, scary interaction with something that was unseen. It became this beautiful exchange of energy with a loved one. That might not have been my loved one, but it was someone's loved one. This loved one was doing their best to communicate with somebody through the vibrational frequency. And that is not easy to do when somebody's at this vibrational frequency and they're at this vibrational frequency and something's at this vibrational frequency. To have to get a communication stream going between the vibrational frequencies is not easy. And it takes practice and it takes time to be able to shift and move your vibrational frequency around. And what was happening was they were communicating with me in a different vibrational frequency, and I could feel it. I could sense it. I could hear it. I could see it. And so it became beautiful exchanges of energy that had a premise of compassion and had this kindness, because if this was my loved one trying to talk to me, telling me, what they needed or that they needed some kind of support, I would want to do my darndest to help them. And even if the experience still had a level of fear woven into it, as I continued to work through all of the ins and outs of my own limitations and the patterns and the habits and the beliefs and the preconceived notions that I had developed over the years, this deeper drive, this deeper spark of love and compassion, of really truly wanting to help people, help these loved ones that I could see in this unseen world, that drove me forward to unravel the fear and really transform the fear and move through the fear. So it's not that I removed it. It's not that I stopped feeling afraid. It was more that I knew that I was afraid, but there was a deeper love. There was a deeper drive forward that moved me through the fear so that I could come from that place of love, so that I could come from that place of compassion and kindness in doing whatever it was that I was able to do in that moment. to help that soul, to help that consciousness, to help that loved one move forward so that they could continue their own soul's journey, so that they could continue carrying on in whatever capacity that soul, that consciousness was wanting to do. And that became such a beautiful gift and such a beautiful ability for me to do, that in those moments, even though it took me a few years to continue experiencing, these interactions that still had a great deal of fear riddled in them, each one started to crumble that fear, until a beautiful interaction with one of my loved ones, my own loved ones. It was actually my uncle, who committed suicide when I was in my late teens. I didn't have a relationship with him. I only knew of him from when my mom would tell me about parts of her experience with my dad. And so I knew he was my dad's brother. And I knew a little bit about him, and I knew some of his personality, and I knew a little bit about the family on that side. But I didn't know him. And so it was funny enough when I actually went to the holistic center, that little community of people that I was interacting with, they were having like community meetups and stuff like that, like group circles, things like that. And I was going pretty regularly to those things for a few years. And one of the ladies that was kind of operating out of there, she was offering, psychic medium readings or something like that. And so I felt really drawn to go have a session with her. And it was in that session, and the way that she brought forward the information for me allowed me to see how much I was still questioning things. And the person that she brought through was actually my uncle. And the way that he came through was so beautiful in allowing me to see how much I was not trusting, how much I did not trust what I saw, trust what I felt, trust what I knew. And this was the turning point that allowed me to start developing a deeper trust in working with my abilities, honing my skills, because now that the fear was starting to unravel further, so that I could have these compassionate, loving experiences that truly come from a place of servitude, of wanting to offer my support and my guidance and my wisdom to these loved ones, these beings, either wanting help or just, that are there trying to communicate. There was still this massive barrier around me not trusting the information. And so when I would see and sense things, I was seeking outside validation. I was looking at my daughter, I was looking at my sister, and I was reaching out to other people to say, hey, can you check this for me? Or hey, can you do this for me? Or hey, this happened to me. What is your take on it? And I was seeking so much outside myself because I had not been able before this to really nurture and trust the unseen. So the next part that I was stepping into, that I guess you could say my team, my soul was unlocking for me at this moment, was this introduction to what it looked like to really trust yourself, to really trust in your experiences, to really trust in the unseen. And this is where faith is cultivated. This is where you're being invited to explore knowing and trusting what you know without second guessing, without wondering if you're crazy, or wondering if what you're seeing is, feeling, seeing, sensing, hearing, knowing is actually true. And it became this beautiful interaction of experiences that started to unfold afterwards, of even if I couldn't fully explain it, even if I couldn't fully share it with people, I just started to naturally trust what was happening. So I am absolutely so grateful for the way that my uncle stepped in to help me unravel that fear even further. Because truly, if he hadn't, I don't know if I would be able to work in the capacity that I work now, because some of the things that I've been invited to heal and invited to experience since that's happened would have left my younger self completely traumatized, and I probably would have went into a catatonic state for some of these experiences, because of the deep-seated layer of fear and the interaction that I was exposed to, or that I got to experience. The beautiful thing about fear is that it's easily transformed, and it's easy to give it a path and a direction when you come from a place of love, when you're grounded. And that's the other thing too. When I started to curate and hone my skills and abilities, and I had access to all this beautiful resources to help me move forward in learning how to be psychic medium, and how to protect myself, and how to embrace being an empath so that I'm not overwhelmed and bombarded by all of these emotions flooding in all the time. Grounding and breathing and learning the energetic boundaries, and that really have the premise in intention setting. Those were the tools that I used to help set the stage for how I was going to work. So, realistically, this journey that I have been on with ghostly encounters, living my life as an empathic psychic medium, has certainly not been an easy one. But I will say, looking back, there has been some really key pivotal moments that have allowed me to step in and shine my light with those that are guided my way. So I hope that this video has kind of sparked some fascination and some curiosity within your own life to share some of your interactions of the ghostly type, and even some of those pivotal moments for you that have really led you to kind of where you are, whether you're still dealing with maybe something confusing with some of these experiences, or even if they were just a really beautiful experience that really opened you to a new direction to help you nurture yourself even further, or even return you back to yourself. I would love to hear more of the experiences that you've had and how they have helped you to become who you are today. So until our next ghostly love video, I wish you an amazing day, and I look forward to reading your ghostly encounters.